Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 88 of Cutscene Combos. We have got an absolutely stacked episode this week. Our character profile is on Wraith from the Spider-Man world. We've got Loki episode 3, Gen V episode 6. I will be giving you my story review of Spider-Man 2. We've got a beefy Nerd News Network, and we've got our content championship, which is the animated Spider-Man TV show versus Rogue One. But before all that good stuff, Hori, how has your week been?
My week's been pretty good. Got a haircut. Went to the barbers.
I think
Had
you
a...
got more than one cut.
Jesus. That was so bad and deserves to be called out for being bad. I went to the barbers for like the first time in 2 months. So I'm back to looking my ordinary self, and my girlfriend's very happy about that. It was my girlfriend's birthday, so spent
Phenomenal.
time with hers, chilled, went out with some friends to a place in Manchester called Pixel Bar, which is like you can rent like a booth with a gaming console and
Oh,
buy
that's sick.
drinks. Yeah, it's very cool, very fun.
Oh wait, I think they had. Oh, there's one similar in London that me and Jenna looked at going at, but
Possibly, yeah.
it was like 40 quid an hour to rent the booth, and then it's London, so drinks were like
Yeah.
15 quid each.
Okay.
And we're like, you know what? I can get drunk while playing games on a PC.
It's a lot cheaper up north.
Yeah.
They were doing like 2 cocktails for deal prices and stuff. So, and they have
Oh.
like all game themed cocktails, and it's a very
Yeah.
cool place.
Nice.
So that was good fun. Had a good time. And then I've just been playing a kind of fuck ton of CS. I've just been grinding. And really sweating it again. So me and my mate who I used to grind it with, like we worked out we hadn't played in like 6 years. Well, I'm back to learning smoke lineups, learning different maps, getting
So you're
back
ready
into
to
the groove of
absolutely carry
things.
me.
I don't know about that, but I've not been ranked yet, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's been my week. Very chill week, to be honest. How's yours been?
My week's been. How's my week been? My week's been pretty good. Um,
Spider-Man.
we yeah, last weekend or last Friday, Spider Man came out, and Jenna was going up to Leeds for an S Club concert with her sister.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent the entire weekend playing and streaming Spider Man. Phenomenal. We'll get into that later though. This week it was a lot of wishing there was more Spider Man. I
Which we'll also
finally
get into there.
organized. Yeah, I also organized and caught up on some of my comic books for the first time in an
Nice.
age.
Nice.
So
So has the
I
pile
haven't got
gone
into.
down?
I mean, technically yes.
Doesn't look like
So this is the pile here. That pile there is mainly comics that I haven't read from last Christmas. But at the very top is my ones that arrive monthly.
Ah,
And I've got 4 more packets to read. Each
right.
one is about half an hour's worth of reading.
Okay.
But it's a lot more organized so that now when I have time to read a comic, I can just
Just
grab a
grab,
packet and
yeah.
read through it. But I'm caught up on Miles Morales Spider-Man at the minute, which is nice.
Okay.
And then we're going to see Five Nights at Freddy's on Saturday because Jen doesn't do horror films at all.
Right.
Like it's not her thing. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, last few years I've got her to agree on Halloween night we'll watch a horror film.
Yep.
Because it's not that even like I love horror films, but I really enjoy them around Halloween. It's one of the few things that I think in this country that people really do around Halloween is they'll watch a scary film.
Mm.
But she's working late Halloween night, so she agreed we could stay at home and watch a scary film, or if there's a scary film at the cinema, we can go watch that.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck it, let's go watch Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know if it'll be any good, but
Well,
it could be a good laugh. We'll go out for dinner. It'll be great.
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But other than that, it's
Nice.
been a pretty chill week.
Good to hear.
So to begin our Spider-Man field episode,
Yes.
I was confident going into this game that I would come out of it with a couple of character profiles that had to be done.
Yes, you were.
And I'm trying to stagger them slightly so that I don't ruin anything for anyone.
Smart.
So I started with a character that was leaked in the trailer, So if you're dense enough to not know that this person existed, that's on you.
Aye.
And then based on the speed at which people are getting through this game, if you haven't found the other characters by the following few weeks, again, shame on you. Right. So our character profile this week is Wraith, who is a side character in Spider-Man 1 and in Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
Yuriko, or Yuri Watanabe, made her first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 600, July 2009.
Not too old.
Before becoming Wraith in Amazing Spider-Man number 663 in June 2011.
Okay.
Yuri was a soldier turned police captain for the NYPD. She followed in her grandfather's honourable footsteps and tried to rewrite her father's wrongs. Her grandfather, Kenneth Watanabe, had
Nice.
received the NYPD Medal of Honor, and her father, John, another police officer, had been convicted of taking bribes while she was still serving in the army. Once becoming an NYPD police captain, she became a staunch ally of Spider-Man, helping him with battles against the Magia, Mr. Negative, as well as other villains like Hobgoblin.
Okay.
Sometime later, Yuri would use equipment from villains, including Mysterio and Chameleon, to become the new Wraith, disguising herself as the ghost of Jean DeWolf, the sister of the original Wraith. After her vigilante behavior in helping Spider-Man and Anti-Venom defeat Mr. Negative caused a colleague of hers to uncover her secret, she was convinced to give up her vigilantism, and she decided to take a temporary leave of absence from the NYPD and New York. She returned to New York when her colleague became suspicious of the superior Spider-Man, who is Dr. Octavius in Peter's body. She took back her moniker as Wraith to help uncover the mystery and stop Superior Spider-Man. However, not long after this, while hunting Tombstone, her long-term mentor was shot and killed. This began a spiral in which even Spider-Man noticed a change in her behavior. She began being more violent towards criminals, more aggressive towards criminals, but most alarmingly, she began using Mr. Negative for information on criminals, which turned out to be a grand manipulation, as Mr. Negative was feeding her partially accurate information that would benefit him and also put her in sticky situations. This caused her great rage, made her even more violent and dangerous, before eventually, while chasing Mr. Negative, she ended up killing one of his henchmen. She then began hunting Mr. Negative himself, hoping she could kill him for what he had turned her into. Spider-Man was able to subdue her before she could kill Mr. Negative, but she escaped his custody. And now she roams New York as the Wraith.
Okay.
She kind of has a Punisher-esque role. She's not quite as violent as Punisher.
Okay.
But she's definitely not adverse to killing someone if she feels it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, Peter wants none of it.
Yeah.
So, as is, I think, quite a traditional Spider-Man story, he will work with someone if it's doing good, but then when they start to walk across them lines that he's not willing to, you get kind of this three-way battle where it's him trying to stop the criminal and stop you from killing said criminal, which is always an interesting dynamic to have play out. And that is the Wraith, Yuri Watanabe. I wasn't aware of this character before playing the first Spider-Man game.
Okay.
So I got to watch a lot of her story through the first game and the second game and see how that all goes together. Which made me very interested in doing a character profile. And a lot of the time, there's a character who's a big part of media at the minute who I'm not as confident on. I'm like, they definitely need a character profile. Then because it gives me, I'm not sure if excuse is the right word. It gives me a reason to do a bit more research into
Oh
them
yeah.
and learn a bit more about them. But also, if I want to know, there's definitely someone else who also wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, I have
Um,
no idea who this was. So
yeah. And we've got some very, very cool character profiles coming up that I'm very excited to sit down and write over the next few weeks.
I am intrigued.
But before that,
Mm.
Loki episode 3.
Yes, the love triangle.
Ooh.
It was. I still think the pacing's okay so far. I think the whole use of the loom still being like, I'm glad that they addressed that the loom isn't actually sorted. So they've still got this like issue that's looming
Yeah.
over everything. So it's keeping the pace somewhat quick enough, I think, so far.
I think we were right that they kind of had the pruning at the end of the last episode to stabilize the loom so that people weren't going, well, how's the loom still alive
Yeah.
then? But also it didn't solve the problem. And they said during this episode, okay, but that was a temporary fix that's going to allow us a bit of time. But these timelines are going to start diverging again and getting bigger again. And then we're going to be
Yeah.
back where we were.
Well, that was the
I thought, we've
interesting
got to move
thing.
quick here.
OB was like, the branches are regrowing. So my thought is like, are they? So the pruning clearly, in the sense of what was meant to happen for the pruning, it hasn't really done anything. And are these branches? I wonder if these branches are regrowing the same, or are they split more? So in a way, there's now more branches that are happening.
So you've got to remember, like it's all very botany based. They're branches, so they prune. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are regrowing because they're not doing anything to stop the divergent timelines.
Well, yeah. Then they
So
didn't do it at the beginning, sort of thing.
yeah. So imagine what we're getting in reality is someone coming along with a hedge trimmer, tidying up the hedge, and they're going to start growing back.
Yeah.
But they might not grow back the exact same way.
Yeah. Okay.
So them like variations of timelines we were seeing might not exist again yet or ever.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think it permanently gets rid of it, but bearing in mind we now know that time is a big circle that just repeats.
Yeah.
It might take
Everything
we
can
don't know what a
re-happen
revolution
eventually.
is, but it might take 300 or 400 loops before the same decisions happen in the same way again to allow the same branch to exist.
Yeah, I get you. There was something else OB said that I thought was quite interesting, which like he mentioned they need to make the ring bigger so it can handle the increase threads and the knotted threads. And I was like, I saw a theory, was like, someone was like, I wonder if those knotted threads are where thingy events are happening, or what they call it, where two worlds collide.
Oh, okay.
In Doctor Strange, I forget the term for it now.
Incursions.
I wonder if that's called like this has caused incursion events to be happening.
Yeah, no,
Like
that's
everything's
a good
getting
idea.
messed up. There's obviously a lot of things that this could affect in like whether it's branches or maybe on the actual the prime time, the one true timeline,
The sacred timeline.
one.
Yeah, 100%. It's very interesting to see how it's all going to play out in the long term. That is for sure.
But we saw Chicago.
I was really, really interested to get your thoughts on the idea that the sacred timeline is sacred, but it's not actually. It was created to be sacred. But it proves that he wasn't doing it out of the kindness of his heart because he had a failsafe in place to manipulate the sacred timeline to allow him to be reborn in the same way.
Well, yeah, there was. So he exists on the sacred timeline, and then when he's given the book that makes a branched one, it's like almost, which then proves the point of like, I guess there's versions of him that would never really have become Kang, maybe on the sacred timeline, unless they're like, I think it's, so that's something that's like this new Kang variant we've got. I think So we know from season one, he mentions it was like the 30th century is when there was like the Great War of the like the Kangs were all fighting and stuff. And this is set late. This is obviously a later date than that. This is like
Hmm.
1960. I wonder if the He Who Remains has purposefully like whether he existed he clearly didn't only exist at that time point in time. Has he then planted like multiple kind of Kang babies across the sacred timeline? And then he can, and like you say, at any point, fail safe, he can have one turn molded the
Yeah,
way he wants it to be molded. It's quite clearly like he's trying to protect his idea of the TVA and his way of running things by causing, like, controlling when one of these Kangs, how his path goes, sort of thing.
yeah, 100%.
So I don't think this
It
new one's one of the evil ones per se.
um,
I don't.
it's it's tricky,
Mm,
because I think inherently the way like Kang
well, yeah.
is all Kangs are like not inherently bad by themselves, but it's once they have the challenge of their alters they become evil. If that makes
I
sense.
get you.
So in isolation they're fine.
Mm,
It's when they like start butting heads that they become a problem because they know how to push each other's buttons and get each other into their worst versions.
yeah.
Um, what's really interesting is the story that's being set up between Ouroboros and Kang.
Yeah.
Just like so, they drop off the TVA book to Kang, or sorry, to Victor.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like obsessed with Ouroboros, and that's the thing. It's not just like this book. He talks about Ouroboros, this gentleman Ouroboros, and I mean, all of the evidence suggests that Ouroboros never had his mind wiped. Is that
Mm,
part of the
must be. The plan
reset?
must be part of the
Because
plan.
yeah, it's very, very interesting. So, does this series potentially end? Because now that Kang's in the TVA, or sorry,
Mm,
Victor's in the
yeah,
TVA, does this end with Ouroboros teaching Victor, and then what Victor learns from Ouroboros turns him into Kang essentially,
possibly. Yeah, I do
or
think there's
turns him into
some
He Who
like
Remains?
essentially he who remains is like failsafe is he has these other versions of himself to replace him. But at the end of the day, he needs someone who always understands the temporal loom and how the TVA runs and keeps it running and essentially can reteach him.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think you're right. OB becomes this like purposeful person that is hidden away, but is essential to the TVA and can reteach Kang again how it all
100%.
works and how to and then repeat the cycle. I do think that's. I think it's also interesting. We got a bit of Miss Minute's backstory.
Yes.
She was made before the TVA and everything. I have a theory on why Miss Minutes clearly wants to be with Kang or Victor or He Who Remains when she's on about like a body and she wants physical
Yeah.
touch. Obviously, we've talked about Renslayer and how in the comic she's like a partner of
Yeah, the love
Kang's. But
interest.
yeah, I wonder if Miss Minutes is based off an old variant of Renslayer, like based off
Maybe.
like her personality, and that's why there's this inherent connection that they have.
Maybe.
I also think Miss Minutes is being set up to be the evil of the season more than
Quite
Kang
possibly.
is.
Yeah, because right now Victor isn't Kang. He's
Well, yeah,
not close to
sorry,
being
yeah,
Kang.
Victor.
So you're gonna have a Miss Minutes character who's just desperate to have a Kang because she loves
Mm,
Kang. So
mm,
she's gonna try and create. She's gonna try and push Victor into this direction and manipulate stuff for sure.
I wonder if we
Um,
get like a factory reset on Miss Minutes.
I think how what we got 3 episodes left, so it's da-da-da-da-da.
The loom's gonna get fixed at some point, I think.
Yeah. So the last episode of Loki comes out the day the Marvels come out.
Okay. Mm,
That's not common.
no, but at the same time, all the schedule changes and stuff, like,
Yeah, not wrong.
probably
Um,
wasn't intended.
it's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, I wonder. We've got 3 episodes left. I do think the loom gets fixed because we're gonna kind of want that payout of they fix it or the TVA goes into meltdown.
Yeah.
Like we either see what happens when it does finally melt down and it all collapses, or we see what happens, it gets fixed and maybe things get reset. I
I
think
mean,
maybe it ends on Victor stepping past that into becoming Kang, sort of like it ends with him kind of realizing the control he can have, maybe.
yeah, I think it's a bit tricky because if you have the TVA still around, you've got people who understand the timeline
Mm,
around to help when Kang arrives.
mm,
Whereas if you let the TVA get destroyed, all you have is Loki and maybe Mobius to help the Avengers and other
yeah.
heroes understand how dangerous Kang is.
Yeah, true.
So it might
Oh,
actually be a situation where letting the TVA be destroyed and only having Loki, Sylvie, Mobius survive is
what if
better.
Victor is a distraction?
In what sense?
What if right at the end of this season, an evil Kang rocks up, kills Victor to cause the TVA to melt down and give them all like the all the Kangs the freedom to do what they want, sort of thing. And like you say,
Yeah,
then you've only got Loki, maybe Mobius and Sylvie that like no, maybe Obi survives.
yeah, no, that makes sense.
And like
I
we're
could see
focused
that
on
happening.
expecting Victor to become the next Kang, and then suddenly evil Kang comes along, it all collapses and it all goes wrong. I do
Wouldn't
think
be
you
against
might be
that.
right with the TVA is going to come to an end. So there's this issue of Avengers and stuff don't know and understand like
Yeah, if
who
you've
the
got an entire army of TVA agents who understand how dangerous this all is and know how to manipulate it and all their technologies alive,
hmm,
you've got too many easy cop outs.
yeah.
And then if they don't use them easy cop outs, you're gonna have people going, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why didn't they just use this?"
Hmm.
So I think that is part of the problem.
Did you see the Thor Thor's brother little Easter egg
No,
when they arrived at the fair? Oh, what's Thor's brother called? I'm forgetting now. Um,
I assume you mean other than Loki.
yeah, other than Loki,
Do they have his own other brother?
there is. Oh my god, why am I forgetting his
Boulder?
Boulder. There's like Odin, Thor, and Boulder, and
Yeah.
Loki's like, why is Boulder there? And then Mobius is like, oh yeah, Boulder the Brave. And then you get a moment of Loki going, yeah, Thor's not that tall. Like still bitter about his half brother. But I'm like, is Marvel? Are we gonna get like a
Boulder the Brave.
yeah, maybe? But
um,
there was a few different Easter eggs dotted around.
Overall, I'm enjoying the show. I do not have the same confidence as you regarding the pacing. I
I'm
don't think
hopeful.
enough has happened for halfway through the show. But
Um,
we also don't know what end point they're trying to get to.
yeah, this is the thing.
If the end point is just a resolution with the loom situation,
That's what I'm
they
thinking.
can get there relatively easily. But I don't know how much else we get to go with that.
I'm of the mindset of the story like this season is based on the loom, and it's going to end with either meltdown or fixed, and whatever happens around that happens around it. But I think that is, which I think at the moment it feels like it's going to be okay to hit that. But I am still like cautiously optimistic as of the track record of the MCU shows. Like we've seen the issues before, sort of thing. I guess we just wait and
Yeah.
see.
Gen V episode 6.
More twists and turns.
After the chaos that was last week's episode, with none of the characters knowing what was going on, and even though we thought we knew what was going on, we didn't know what was going on.
Now there's
This
more we
week,
didn't know.
yeah, this week having this kind of element of everyone gets their memories back, and then like mind melt Kate traps them all inside her head in the most terrifying way possible.
Yep. We get some dreams and dreams situation.
Finding out about Jordan's.
Everyone's got dirt.
Yeah.
Everyone has blood on their hands, and everyone is being manipulated by that, which is just what we expect from the boys at this point. Like
No
everyone,
one has
yeah,
clean hands. Yeah.
no one is this perfect superhero. Everyone's just doing what they can and being forcefully led in places they might not want to go. But yeah, we
And
get
to realize how long Kate had been manipulating people as well was crazy. I mean, it does make sense that she'd been manipulating people for a while. And she dropped, like we found out a few episodes ago, she dropped out of the hero side and she'd moved into the talent side because she was going to be Golden Boy's manager. And obviously, we didn't think anything of that at the time. That made sense. He was the number one Golden Boy. She had good powers. They were clearly in love with each other. That makes complete sense. It's not uncommon, especially as people, me and you, who watch the gaming industry so much. It's really not uncommon for big gamers and streamers to have their spouse be their manager.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it also makes sure, like, it would make sense because she'd want to be in the limelight too, so why not just be the manager? I mean,
but
for starters,
now I think that decision was made by her because her self-esteem was so low from having to do this. Because let's be clear, Kate was being a bitch, but I think she hated every second of it.
Yeah, see, I don't even think it was her decision. I think she was essentially stuck in that position where she had to stay close to Golden Boy because she had to repeatedly keep making him forget. Like, if she just stopped and wasn't his manager, then there's like potential mess there. People finding out, like, she was stuck in this position of having to be right by him because of what she'd been forced to do. Also,
and
like, wild that her powers.
Yeah, and like her life was unlivable without these drugs they were giving her to keep it under control. So what was she supposed to do?
Yeah, it's the
and you got to remember
manipulation.
this girl. Yeah, and this girl had been abused since like she was like 9 years old emotionally because her family hated her for something she couldn't control.
Which we saw.
Which meant when someone came along and treated her remotely nicely, she didn't go, "Oh, this person's just using me." She was like, "It's just nice for someone to be nice to me."
It's like, oh my god, someone hugged me.
And this is exactly how we've seen Vought time and time again get their claws into people.
They get them when they're vulnerable. They manipulate them, think that they care. Then when they get, like, Kate's obviously got older, probably at the point where she was like, I know this isn't right, but I'm stuck doing this and I don't know that I can, like, fight against it.
Yeah.
So yeah, stuck. We saw at the end of the whole dream memory thing, we saw like how many times she made Golden Boy forget. And it seems that obviously, like we kind of theorized last week, which was like, it was obviously the effect of making him forget was getting weaker, which is why he was starting to remember more often. Clearly, it's like she can do it. Like the brain just fights it to a point where like even she can't make them forget something like that.
Based on how we know other superhero powers work in The Boys, I wouldn't be surprised if her power was giving him some kind of genuine brain damage.
Yeah, well, I would imagine it's sort of like she's not necessarily erasing the memory. She's just cutting off like the neural connections to that memory. And then like your brain just regrows those connections. It's like when you forget to walk, you relearn and you regrow those connections on how to walk. and then your body's like, oh shit, we remember how to do this. I think it's the same thing of like, she's able to kind of cut off a memory, but not get rid of it. And it's just the brain just fights against that. And it's like slowly over time, these things rebuild. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Especially when he's as superpowered as he is, probably with an
mm,
enhanced healing factor or whatever.
exactly.
Have you also seen, though, with the theme in this show being people using their powers without knowing or meaning to, that people are starting to think that Golden Boy didn't kill himself and Marie accidentally killed him based on the way he exploded?
Maybe.
Because he didn't like burn himself to a crisp. He flew up and blew up.
True.
And now that we've seen more of Marie's powers and how they work, people are wondering, did Marie, bearing in mind she doesn't seem to fully understand her own powers,
No.
did she, like,
Out
in
of
a moment
fear.
of panic,
Yeah.
accidentally blow him up?
Maybe. I don't know. It could also be like they knew a way to kind of, or he knew to overcharge himself. He clearly was the whole like pumping him full of blood as well from his brother to like clearly trying or were enhancing his powers.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting that everyone essentially has blood on it. Like everyone has dirt. Like Jordan only got the assistant role because she walked in on
one of the other times he worked out what was going on.
Yeah, and like stepped in because it's in that situation where like you don't know that you might have just helped the wrong person, and then that like the dean he's like, oh, you've done great, and it's like suddenly some like appreciation that Jordan hadn't felt from like a father figure, and then suddenly like, oh yeah, cool, I'll be a PA. As like everyone had dirt. I think that also kind of helps Kate's situation, helps them realize that she isn't necessarily a bad person because she was stuck in that situation and got manipulated. We do have to talk about though what the fuck happened to Dusty.
He did.
Is he? Like no one addressed it. Like I was expecting them to come out of the like memory shit, and it's just like there's just blood on the floor. But like
he's had a brain aneurysm essentially.
Yeah,
he's brain dead.
His body should be there then.
Yeah, no, he was behind the counter
Yeah,
when
but
she was on the thing.
How did they not notice
it? No, they probably just didn't give a fuck.
Here's the thing. I think they're going to be like, the next thing will be like, hang on. Has anyone seen Dusty? And then they're going to find his body.
Dusty's dead. The Soldier Boy cameo was very well done.
Little creepy that they made him so obsessed with the fact that he got Kate to come of age.
Well, you've got to remember that's like how Kate thinks.
I know, but it's still.
Which is why he was weirdly politer than actual Soldier Boy.
Well, yeah, he's like how he appears on TV. Like we know what he's like, but for the TV, like TV Soldier Boy is how Homelander TV used to be. Like everyone thought he was amazing and this perfect American hero. So of course, like that's her perception of it.
Very, very, very good.
Emma and Sam got it on.
Yeah. I'm actually a big fan of that romantic storyline.
Yeah, so am I. Do you know what it's making me think of? And this is obviously like, I know the boys and generally it's like always poking punches at Marvel and stuff. Sam, very strong, goes into a bit of a rage, almost Hulk-like a little bit, loses control. We had Black Widow was the person that got him to come back. We now have Emma is the person that's going to get Sam to come cool down and chill out.
The notion that he had one of his episodes where everyone appears to be puppets mid through losing his virginity is fucking hilarious.
I think that showing it comes from essentially a place of like when he's in a situation that he is unknown and his brain sort of like panics or like goes into like childhood mode because he's like, oh my god, what the fuck? Like we don't know what to do in this situation. So yeah, the fact that Emma turned into a puppet midway through, and it's like that's Bit of a weird thing to happen to you, mate, but here we are.
Yeah. It was overall it was another really good episode. I mean, Gen V's not missing.
It's really not.
It's progressing the story really well. We've got 3 more episodes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 2 more episodes. 2 more.
Is it not? Oh, is it only 8, not 9?
Next Friday, Friday the 3rd is the last episode of Gen V and the first
Okay.
episode of Invincible.
We also do need to talk about the Dean and what she's up to.
Nothing good, Hori.
I don't think she's doing this for Vought. Well, I think she is, but she's got her own agenda.
This is the Boys 101. Everyone's part of an organization and an entity, but everyone has their own ulterior motives, and they try and find this cross point where everything lines up. So she is absolutely trying to find students who can protect her from Vought, in case what she's trying to do for Vought doesn't work.
Yes, but I also think she has a personal agenda of she wants to kill all soups. I reckon the reason that she was like so excited that this virus had killed one of them, and she wants to make it contagious, I don't think she cares about suppressing soups. I think she wants to get rid of soups. She's in a school where she didn't have powers. She sees all these students with power. I reckon that everyone has their own agenda. I think she genuinely hates soups, and she's using her position now to try and find a thing that's gonna.
So we know that this season of Gen V leads into season 4 of The Boys. Do we think this season potentially ends with her making a call to one William Butcher?
Maybe. Or do we end up in a situation where William Butcher is now trying to help the student soups because it's not their choice to be a soup, and they realize that this dean is just as bad as a soup without anyone controlling them? Like, both sides is bad. Soup with ridiculous powers like Homelander, who doesn't give a shit and does what he wants, that's bad, needs to be dealt with. Person who has the power to wipe out all soups because they just see them all as bad, also bad and a bit over the top. Maybe Butcher just becomes just goes after the bad person.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because in reality, Vought, the mega corporation, are the only bad guys here.
Yes.
Yes, we've got Homelander and stuff, but they're only bad guys because of Vought. But I don't know how they fix this because there's no way Amazon let the big crescendo to their biggest TV show end up being mega corporation bad.
I don't know.
As much as I'd love for them to, I don't even think Amazon would, unless they think so little of us as consumers.
I can imagine that.
I can only imagine at some point Amazon go, okay, but now you need a poor immigrant to be the bad guy.
Now, I see Amazon as not interfering because they're just too oblivious to realize this is actually making fun of them. I think they just see the success of the show and see the money and don't really care about anything else.
That is also very possible. Because let's be honest, as we discussed recently, media literacy is at an all-time low, so people won't even realize that the whole point is mega corporation bad. So
yeah,
you're probably not wrong.
But yeah, very excited.
I'm very excited for the next couple of weeks.
Yes.
I've got a feeling this is going to be an absolute bombshell.
It's going to make me want season 2 straight away, though. That's the problem.
And we've got an entire season of The Boys to get through first.
Yeah, this is
not
true.
Get through, enjoy first.
Yes.
But that will be a completely separate story that just feeds into the next story of Gen V. Right.
Your time.
Spider-Man 2.
Yes.
This review is going to be purely based on the story and not the gameplay, because we are a nerd podcast here, and while we are both gamers, I tend to waffle a lot more when I'm getting into gameplay mechanics, and they're also, I think, a lot more subjective.
Yeah.
Because gameplay is such a wide variety, whereas a Spider-Man story is a bit more, this is how it should be done.
Yeah.
So to put this in context, this is a £60 game that cost me nearly £600 to play.
Well, your choice.
Yeah, 100%. But I didn't have a console to play it on. I've been an Xbox gamer, then a PC gamer for like since the 360.
Hmm.
I had a PS2, and then this is I got the PS5. And
Yep.
I did get it purely for this. I almost bought the PS4 years ago when the first Spider-Man game was
You
coming
did.
out. But I think that was 2019. Yeah, so that would have been just around the time I was saving for my PC originally.
Mm.
So I decided not to. Um, it's phenomenal. We knew going into it that the main villains were going to be Kraven and Venom.
Yes, we did.
They did not disappoint.
Okay, good.
I think Sony are in big trouble when the Kraven film comes.
This is
As
why I
I
wanted to ask you about.
predicted many, many months ago,
Mhm.
and I mean, as we both did when we saw them first trailers of Kraven, we're
Yeah.
like, once people get a taste of Kraven like this, whatever they try and give us in that Kraven film, people are not going to be impressed with.
Well, what originally
And
it was Craven film was going to come out first, wasn't it?
yeah,
So this is even worse for them now.
yeah, at least then it might have had a chance of making money. Now people go watch that trailer and go, "That ain't fucking Kraven. What do you mean?"
Mm.
They nailed Kraven.
Nice.
The only thing I think they potentially got slightly wrong, they had
Okay.
to do purely from a gameplay point of view,
Right.
which I think is always important to think about when you're thinking about games. So
Yeah.
they made it so he has all of this money
Mm-hmm.
and all of these resources and all of these henchmen,
Yeah.
which isn't really the case with Kraven. He's kind of a lone hunter,
Gotcha.
but they need
Yeah.
henchmen.
Yeah.
So they made it so he had henchmen.
Yeah. They
But
need an enemy faction. Craven.
But they did put a fuck ton of thought into his henchmen.
Okay. Which
His
is good.
henchmen are hand selected by him.
Okay.
He goes and he finds hunters from around the
Right.
world. He tests them. And then if they're a good enough hunter, they can join him.
In before Marvel now makes this canon.
Yeah. It's a really, really clever way to do it. You can hear a number of the henchmen discussing it, like as you're like doing different things around the map.
That's cool.
The henchmen have a wide array of accents.
Okay.
You've got
good.
like American accents from hunters out from Alaska. You've
Okay.
got some South African accents. You've got some Afrikaans accents, some New Zealand, Australia, European, all over.
That's
Big,
cool.
big, big difference. Because like there's hunters all
Well,
over the
yeah.
world. Yeah, they hunt different things, but they're hunters.
Well, and he would go worldwide to find them.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
One of the biggest like discussions I remember hearing that stuck with me was a South African guy, and he was saying he was protecting wildlife in South Africa from poachers, which means he was the hunter of the poachers.
Yeah.
And he got fired after dealing with the poachers in a way they didn't deem acceptable.
Oh.
And like Craven's whole thing in this isn't necessarily is about hunting animals. It seems like he hasn't hunted animals for a while.
Got you.
He's like humans are the ultimate prey because of like their brains.
Got you.
So you are hunting poachers who can hunt these animals. So if you can hunt the thing that's hunting the thing you're protecting, guess what? You're a better hunter than them.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting way to do it. I am not sure how I feel about where they placed Craven in his life.
Okay.
So it seems like the Craven part of the story was pretty heavily inspired by Craven's Last Hunt.
Right.
Which I disagree with because that is like a later Craven story.
Got you.
I get why they did it again from a storytelling and gameplay perspective. It just feels like a bit of a waste to me.
Right, okay.
But bearing in mind they're not planning on making Spider-Man games for the next 30 years, I get why.
Yeah.
You can't have, if you were going to do it so that this was like a bigger story, you'd have to have him be the villain over multiple games, which unless you're going to do like 7 games for Spider-Man,
Yeah.
isn't really worth it. It's going to take
No.
too long.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at like 4 years between each game.
Yeah.
Um, the Venom portion of the story was interesting. They genuinely had me going back and forth over who Venom was going to be.
Okay.
So it's so funny. Do you remember when Arkham Knight was coming out? And they
Vaguely. Yeah.
introduced the Arkham Knight, and they're like, "Hey, this character knows Batman's secret, and he's the big bad." And everyone instantly went, "Oh, it's Jason Todd." And they
Yeah.
went, "No, it's not Jason Todd."
Yeah.
And then it was Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Well, they've done the exact same thing here.
Okay.
They set it up to be Harry at the end of the first game
Yeah.
because they had Harry healing in a tank with a black symbiote looking thing.
Right. Okay.
Then the trailer comes out and Harry's in the game, and everyone's like, "Okay, cool, Harry's Venom."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "No, Harry's not Venom. It's unique. We're doing it differently." And then Harry was Venom.
Okay.
I don't know what the point in lying is. All you end up doing is potentially risk pissing people off. Just good wisdom to live by in general. But what I will say is, for a Harry symbiote story, I think it's one of my preferred ways they've done it.
Okay. That's good.
I've seen a number of different ways. I still would have preferred them to do the pivot I thought they were going to make. So there is a point where MJ is trying to save her job at the Bugle
Right.
because J. Jonah Jameson's like clearing house a little bit and she's anxious. And
Yeah.
she wrote a really good story about the hunters in New York. And she was really confident about it. And then she gets a notification. She goes, "Oh, I didn't get it. The new reporter did." And no name was mentioned. I was like, "That's Eddie motherfucking Brock." And what I was expecting was, we knew Harry had the symbiote because he'd been
Yeah.
using powers and he'd been helping out. And I was expecting us to realize the symbiote was potentially dangerous, get it off of Harry, and then MJ gets the best story with the help of Spider-Man. Eddie hates Spider-Man. The symbiote breaks free, and they find each other. They're like, "Boom, Eddie Brock," and then everyone's like, "Oh my god, that was such a good bait and switch."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm just a better storyteller than Insomniac because they didn't see that gambit.
Okay.
There was, bearing in mind the story is short for a video
Yes.
game. A 15-hour main story is short. They
Yes, it
did a
is.
phenomenal job of progressing characters across the board.
Okay. That's good then.
Although I've spoken mainly about Peter's story, Miles' story is phenomenal.
Okay.
So
Good.
on Miles' front, we had the battle with Sandman at the beginning.
Yes.
And then he gets taken to the raft, and then we get invited to the raft to help with a prisoner transfer of Scorpion.
Okay.
Supposed to be a really easy thing to do, no worries. We get there, and they're not just transferring Scorpion, they're also transferring Martin Lee, or Mr. Negative,
Right.
who is responsible for Miles' father's death.
Ah.
And at this point, the hunters attack,
and
we hadn't met the hunters up until now.
Gotcha.
Because the hunters are trying to gather these supervillains for Kraven to hunt them.
Yeah.
So then the majority of Miles's story is centered around this idea of Martin Lee is out there somewhere. I don't know if he's free. I don't know if he's captive. But what if he hurts my family again?
Yeah.
Which is a really interesting internal debate, which they handle really well. You get some really good progression. He eventually finds Martin Lee and saves him from Kraven. You fight Martin Lee because you're both captured, and you have to fight Martin Lee, and you're supposed to fight to the death. But instead, you use the opportunity to free Martin Lee and tell him to go find Spider-Man.
Right. Okay.
And then you and Martin Lee together save Spider-Man from the symbiote. At which point Martin Lee kind of takes on a bit of an anti-hero role.
Okay.
But there's a really interesting bit, and this is one of the fucking reasons I love comic books. And just like the media that it creates. There's a bit when they're working together to save Peter,
Mm.
where it looks like they're both potentially going to die, or only one of them's going to make it out.
Right,
And
okay.
Miles says to Martin, "Thank you for helping me. I need to get this off my chest. I can't forgive you for what you did to my family and for killing my father,
Mhm.
but I can't hate you anymore. It's eating me up. It's ruining my life. I can't do it anymore."
Yeah.
And I thought that's actually like a really important story to tell.
Yeah.
Because this idea that it's either you forgive someone or you don't forgive someone and there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't have to forgive someone, but you have to let go of the pain it's causing you.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually like a lot more mature storytelling than I'm ever going to expect from a superhero video game.
Yeah.
That's the kind of storytelling I 100% expect from a comic because they've got the time to tell that story.
Well, yeah.
Um,
To get that into a
but to
game, though.
to bother to tell that story in that way
Mhm.
instead of just going, "Oh, he's the superhero, who'll forgive him,"
Yeah.
is really, really intelligent. And I really enjoyed that. And it ends up having benefits later on when Martin Lee helps out with other stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
Cool.
I won't explain what the outcome of them two helping Peter was. We'll save that for another week.
Right, okay.
We get a number of very, very good set pieces, but the biggest thing to discuss is, without a doubt, the imagery used on Venom's henchmen.
Oh.
Now, once again, I was not a fan of when Venom became the main villain.
Hmm.
His henchmen, basically, the symbiote like infested the city,
Got
and
you.
it turned civilians into mini symbiotes.
Got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because once again, we need henchmen.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it; it's a gameplay device,
Yeah.
but the imagery for the henchmen was more than I expected from again a video game
Yeah.
because it was using imagery from Null, the Elder God we mentioned last week in the Venom character
Oh.
profile. Lots of the spirals, lots of the kind of dragony symbols.
Okay. That's smart.
They paid a lot of love and attention to symbiotes in general and their story, and not
Okay.
just Venom is the really cool
Yeah.
Spider-Man villain. They did it in a very good way, and I have nothing but
Smart.
praise for the Insomniac writing team
Yeah.
for taking the time and care and consideration to think about how they wanted to tell their story.
Yeah. It'll be the writers and the art team.
There
Very
is one
cool.
thing that, as far as I'm aware, is a change from the comics, unless I've missed something, which
Okay.
I actually don't dislike, and I'm curious to see how they pay it off.
Interesting.
Spoilers if anyone's listening but has finished the main story and not the entire game for
Right.
the drone side mission. So there are birds from the hunters, big
Mhm.
mechanical birds
Yeah.
that fly around the city, and basically you have to chase them down, get intel off of them, and
Mhm.
then once you collect all of them, you get told to go to the apartment building.
Oh.
You fight off some of the hunters, and you get into the apartment building. And after working your way through a couple of puzzles, you find out it's the chameleon's apartment.
Oh.
Peter does mention he's fought the chameleon a number of times, but he thought he was in prison.
Okay.
And you find out that the chameleon is actually Craven's brother,
Oh.
which I don't think is the same in the comics. Someone tell me if I'm completely tripping here and I've not read properly. Which
It's
I
pretty
think
cool
is
though.
really interesting. And I'm curious to see if that gets paid off in a DLC or in Spider-Man 3.
Potentially.
They've set up Spider-Man 3 beautifully.
Nice. That's good.
I am very, very much excited for what we're potentially going to get in Spider-Man 3.
Okay.
With some of the characters that were teased.
Mhm.
I will mention some of the characters that are teased. So if you've not basically 100%ed the game or not worked out a lot of what's going on, just
Mhm.
close your ears, skip forward 15, 20 seconds. At the very end, we got a tease for Cindy Moon, which is
Right.
Silk,
Okay.
which is huge.
Okay.
We got a Carnage tease, and we got a big boy Green Goblin tease.
Ooh. Very cool.
So we are ready to cook with absolute gas here. Um, Around the map, there's a number of teasers for Fantastic Four Baxter Building.
That's cool.
Um, while there are complaints online about why aren't the Avengers helping, they've got Avengers Tower in New York. I have 2 points to that. People who, when they're watching a superhero media, are like, "Well, where's this person? Why aren't they helping?" That is one of them things you just have to accept with superhero media.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're never going to enjoy any of it because there is such a saturation of superheroes in these worlds.
Yeah.
In reality, if they all just organized better, villains wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah, but like,
Just assume that the person is off dealing with something just as dire somewhere else.
well, yeah, you just presume like the Avengers are off dealing with something of a greater threat than Craven.
Yeah. But the Baxter Building Fantastic Four helipad was like in construction during this game.
Okay.
I would be quite upset if that building is finished in the next game and we don't get any interaction with the Human Torch, because Peter and the Human Torch are like best buds.
That would be very cool.
What's the other thing? Oh, okay. Again, this is all still story stuff, so spoilers if you're not most of the way through the game. So during the game, at the start of the game, Peter has started a new job.
Yeah.
As Miles' teacher.
Okay.
Which is hilarious and a brilliant concept that I wish we had more time with. Unfortunately, Peter gets fired because at the very start of the game, when you go out to fight Sandman, he leaves his class to fend for themselves in the middle of a citywide disaster. Gets you fired pretty quickly as a teacher.
Yeah.
But then Harry comes back from his trip to Europe.
Right. Okay.
And he invites Peter to come and work at his startup, which is the Emily May Foundation.
Right.
Emily being Harry's mum, who passed away, and May obviously being Aunt May, who passed away at the beginning of the first game.
Yeah.
So Peter's thrilled. Throughout the story, like, Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man as well, which means he's like, oh, I can keep being Spider-Man and work at the Emily May Foundation, and if I need to run off, it won't be a big problem. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Because of battles that go on, the Emily May Foundation main headquarters gets destroyed. But the game does end with Peter basically retiring as Spider-Man and continuing the Emily May Foundation from his garage. So a lot of the story was kind of a handing of the torch moment from Peter to Miles, and Miles now having dealt with Mr. Lee in a way that Peter was even like, I'm not sure I could reform my greatest villain.
Yeah.
Peter was like, okay, city's yours, Miles. I'm here if you need anything, but I trust you've got it.
Yeah.
And Miles was like, I got it, don't worry. As long as I can still come to you for advice. Which means the story in the next game is going to be Green Goblin comes out and works out that Peter is Spider-Man or was Spider-Man, forcing Peter out of retirement, which has a beautiful storytelling aspect to it.
Yes, it does. It's very smart. Very smart.
Overall, the story doesn't miss in any ways that are crucial.
Okay.
I think the only complaints are going to be completely individual things.
Yeah.
Or things that have to happen for plot purposes.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, in the sense of, like I said, with Craven and his gang of hunters and stuff, you've got to accept there needs to be henchmen in video games.
Yeah.
Overall, I couldn't be happier with the story. It's about as good as it gets. It had me for the first time in months desperate to read a Spider-Man comic. I was like, I need more. The personality of the characters really shone through here. And I don't think there are any valid complaints that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, the only complaint I've seen across social media is it's short.
Yeah.
And while that is a bit disappointing how short it is, at the same time it shows, like you've been saying, like how good the story is. If people want it to be like 40, 50 hours long, Like, if people are wanting more of it, like you've clearly made a very compelling story and game. It's just a shame that there's not more. But
As I said, if they want to drop 4 10-hour DLCs and charge
mm,
me 15 quid for each of them, I'll probably buy all of them without even thinking about it.
yeah, they could
Because the
very easily
game
add
is
more.
so well put together. Some nerdy news time.
Yes, quite a bit has happened this week.
Yeah, it was a busy week in the world of news.
It
Right.
was.
Starting off with something
Mm.
we thought was happening last week, but I can't remember if we said anything because we weren't sure, so we wanted to not say anything.
Yeah, I think we'd only heard that there was a potential delay coming, but we didn't know
Yes.
any details yet.
So, Captain America: Brave New World
Yes.
was originally known as New World Order, but they changed that name because they realized that had weird connotations.
Mm-hmm.
Has been slated for a May 3rd, 2024 release date.
Mm.
This date has, after the first batch of delays,
Yeah.
had been slated for the Deadpool 3 release.
Mm.
This means that Deadpool 3 has been delayed, like people were assuming was a potential
Yeah,
risk.
and the director had said, like other things are causing our film to be delayed."
Yes.
So that was what was coming out last week, and then now with the reveal of the new Captain America date, kind of just confirms the fact that Deadpool's been shoved back.
Yeah. They're like halfway through filming it, and
Yeah.
as we're about to find out, SAG-AFTRA is not close to a deal.
No.
Okay, so there's a lot that's happened over the last week with like this, so take this all with a pinch of salt because stuff is moving fast.
Yes.
So SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP are reportedly back at the table currently.
Apparently.
And this was after AMPTP realised and this is a quote by the way, fucked it by walking away from the table previously.
Recall to last week when we mentioned that the Netflix CEO told shareholders, yeah, we're in negotiations, but it actually was one of 4 CEOs that had walked away.
Yes.
So,
And the Netflix CEO's been in the news again for maybe saying stuff that's less than true.
no, there's a surprise.
Because the Netflix CEO claims they are working hard to find a solution, failing to mention he was one of the CEOs who walked away from the table. And the only reason that there isn't a solution is because they are refusing to meet the fair demands from SAG-AFTRA.
Mm-hmm. There's a surprise.
This is like saying I'm trying to find a solution to my drinking problem while continuing to drink.
Yeah.
The solution is to accept the help you're offered and stop drinking.
Yeah, I'm working
And
on
you
my
know what?
gambling addiction,
Yeah.
but CS cases.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, that's actually a harder situation because there's an addiction there. This
Yeah.
is just a rich arsehole.
Yeah. And like, I like the fact that it got put as they realized they fucked it. In other words, all of these different boards of people have gone, hang on a second, we can read the news. We know you walked away, and they're like, ah, shit, we've been caught. Can we go back to the table, please?
But it gets worse still.
It does.
The
somehow.
major film studios are worried that if they can't decide to pay their actors fairly or get the actors to agree to a less than ideal deal within the next week or so, that the 2023-2024 television season will be scrapped and more films will be delayed. We said that they had X amount of time to get this done before anyone would notice the real effects of it. We are now getting to fuck around and find out.
Yes, we are. We've had delays, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're getting all these film delays," but like that's just the start of it. Like people need to realize. I think people have sort of saw the writers got a deal and were like, "Oh, things are going to get flowing again." It's like, yeah, cool. You could have all these TV shows written, but if the actors haven't made a deal and they're not making the shows, like there's going to be we're going to run out of stuff.
But it gets even worse.
Okay.
Because apparently the AMPTP has threatened SAG-AFTRA once again
There we go.
saying if they can't get to a deal over this weekend, they will not negotiate with them again till January.
They're really trying to play the "we aren't going to give in first" like play here, and it's like I don't think they realize how stubborn people will be when they want to be, especially when you've got high-paid actors keeping things afloat for them.
Yeah. People, not to be overdramatic, but I don't know how else to phrase it. The world and local communities were famously well together during the First World War and the Second World War. Because during hard times, people group together, they work together, it builds a sense of community.
Yeah.
If all these actors are struggling together, they will all lean on each other and work together to make sure no one gets left behind.
Yeah. I guarantee if there isn't a deal met and AMTP or whatever go, right, we're not talking to you now till January, you'll then get a headline of X, Y, and Z actors have all just donated another set of millions into the fund, and AMTP is going to be like, ah, shit. Okay, that didn't work. Like, I don't know what they expect.
Exactly that. And I think the big thing to remember with all this as well is they they're giving big like angry drunk person right now. Because what they're doing is they're going, oh, I see you, I want to talk to you, you're not listening to me. Then they storm off, and then 2 hours later, they're texting them like, hey, you up?
Yeah, it's that like crazy ex-girlfriend or boyfriend's like, oh, we're done, we're broken up, and but then they're like, oh, I see you this weekend, yeah? And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Like, are
It
you
is,
forgetting the conversation we just had?
and whether you guys believe it or not, if they do say we're not talking to you again till January and they follow through on that, CEOs will lose their job.
CEOs,
They
yeah.
will.
There will be.
Especially them media-only companies like Netflix.
Do you know what will happen though? It'll be phrased in such a way that the Netflix CEO has chosen to step away. In other words, no, all these boards of directors have gone, you're costing us money, we're voting you out. Or like, no confidence.
Yeah.
Um,
When
uh,
Netflix announced that the next season of Stranger Things isn't coming for another 2 years and their subscriptions drop off by 15%, and then they drop off at a 1% rate for the 4 months after that, the CEO of Netflix gets fired.
yeah, like we're talking about like the TV season might happen, but there's going to come a point when these streaming services, their content flow and announcements is going to slow down. And people are going to be like, oh, there's nothing new this month on Netflix. Right, unsubscribe. Like that. And also, wouldn't surprise me if next year some TV network's like, hey, we got the rights to Friends and we're going to rerun Friends for the whole 11 seasons or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to suddenly see a load of shows come back on TV that they're like, oh, we're rerunning old shows. It's like, no, you're just out of content.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And this is another thing to remember with films as well. We are likely going to see over the next year, depending on how this goes, a fuck ton of film re-releases.
yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Remastered.
Yeah, and they're all going to come back to the cinema so that they can try and keep the cinema busy so people don't notice a problem.
Do you know what they're going to do? It's going to be like, so-and-so film's 5th year anniversary, 10 year, 12, 25 year, and they'll do it this way to try and market
13th
it. But
year anniversary.
you're just going to get like weird stuff.
And although SAG-AFTRA hasn't said anything yet, I imagine when that does start happening, we need to not go to the cinema and see re-releases of films.
Yeah, I think they will come out
is
and
them
call it
just
out.
trying to save their money.
Yeah, they will call it out, and people will listen. People will just stop. Like, why am I going to pay to watch this re-release when I have it on DVD? I have it on your streaming service. I'm already subscribed to.
Exactly. So, do you know what people should do with their money instead when they cancel their subscriptions because there's no new content?
What's that?
They should spend it on comic books, Hori. And I have just the idea for someone who's never got into comic books before.
What comics would they be?
Well, you see, at the New York Comic Con, Marvel announced the first titles for their new Ultimate Universe reboot.
Oh.
Now, the Ultimate Universe was a brilliant concept that got a little bit weird. But it did give us some great things like Miles Morales.
Yes.
And they're starting to relaunch this concept.
Okay.
And they've announced the first 4 titles that are relaunching it now.
Okay.
So you've got the Ultimate Universe comic,
Yep.
Ultimate Spider-Man, because of
Right.
course you're not doing something without Spider-Man being one of the first names on the
Yeah.
sheet.
Yep.
Ultimate Black Panther, which I think is
Okay.
a brilliant decision,
Yeah.
and then Ultimate X-Men.
Okay.
And I'm going to be very careful with my words here,
Oh,
but I'm going to say exactly why these decisions were made.
go for it.
Ultimate Universe is someone who wants to read comics, but they don't know what characters they like, and they can just read this and they'll feel like they know what's going on with the world.
Yep.
Ultimate Spider-Man is for people who like a big name character.
Yes.
And then the marketing department will like, right, we need 2 other groups, 2 other comics.
Yeah.
Ultimate Black Panther is for minority communities.
Yeah.
The
Representation.
success of the Black Panther films
Yeah.
is 100% Marvel going, there is money to be made from people of color.
Yeah.
So we are going to find a way to make that money. And I'm not sure how, I assume this is relatively popular knowledge, but this might be one of these moments where I'm caught in a little glass house here and don't realize. X-Men has kind of been, although a lot of people are big X-Men fans, X-Men for the last kind of 20 years has kind of been a big part of LGBT culture.
Makes sense.
A lot of people resonate with the X-Men and the way they're treated,
Well, yeah,
especially in the LGBT community. So although the X-Men is very popular and very easy decision to choose them, that also gives them reach into that community as well.
Yeah.
So that's why that is why they've started with them full. Without a shadow of a doubt in my mind.
It makes sense.
And that's not a bad thing either. I also think that's a good covering.
Yeah.
Ultimate Universe, it will give you lots of different stories, I'm sure. Ultimate Spider-Man is for people like me who just, I love Spider-Man, give me
Yeah.
Spider-Man. Ultimate Black Panther is probably going to give you an eye into the Avengers in this world.
Yeah.
And it's also going to give you probably more worldly stories rather than just New York. And then
Yeah.
the X-Men is the X-Men. You cannot go wrong with the X-Men. And now that Marvel own the film rights to the X-Men again, they want to get X-Men content back out there,
That's
and
what
they're
I'm
going to stop
thinking.
pretending they like the Inhumans, because they don't. The Inhumans were purely created, they were changed into what they are now because they didn't want to write X-Men stories and give Fox ideas for films.
Oh yeah, it's like when I saw that it was Ultimate X-Men, I was like, this feels like they're trying to drum up attention to X-Men again because we know X-Men are coming in the MCU, and it's like get people talking about X-Men again.
Yeah. You got to remember the most famous Inhuman is Kamala Khan, and she's recently been retconned to be a mutant. So
yeah, I
that
wonder how
tells
many
you all you
more
need to know.
retcons are coming.
That tells you all you need to know right there.
Yeah.
More Spider-Man news, because fuck it, we haven't had enough so far. Spider-Man Far From Home comes to Disney Plus on November 3rd. The most unfairly treated Spider-Man film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because the Raimi trilogy, in some cases, gets the right amount of love, and in some cases, gets too much. Amazing Spider-Man is become a cult classic, so people like to pretend it's better than it actually was. It was okay. It didn't deserve the hate it got initially. It doesn't deserve the Gluck Gluck 3000 it's currently getting from the internet.
Yeah.
And as a result, for some reason, they've decided they hate the MCU Spider-Man. Is weird. I don't get it.
It's the internet.
But it's going to be on Disney Plus now, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to finally, like, I think purely for the sake of people that like to watch through the MCU stuff, it's good to finally have it there. It makes sense that those take a while to get there because I guess Disney and Sony have to come to some agreement.
Well, Sony has a deal with Netflix for
Yeah.
Spider-Man films, so each of the Spider-Man films is coming to Disney once the Netflix deal runs out.
Yeah. So be interesting to see if Netflix is able to uphold that deal going forward.
The live-action Fallout series. that we discussed recently after their dodgy poster
Yes.
that definitely used AI has got a release date.
Hmm.
The first episode is expected to release on Prime Video on April 12th.
Do we think Prime Video will be successful again? I'm unsure.
I don't have a lot of faith in a Fallout TV show, but I mean, let's see what they cook.
It could be good. I always take video game adaptations, even after the Last of Us show. I think that's a
I
very
I view The
that's an
Last of Us as
exception.
a yeah, exactly that. It's the exception, not the rule at all. We've also had Halo in that period of time.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm like, any video game into TV show, I take lightly till
The
I'm proven
only
otherwise.
the only benefit of the Fallout brand is because of the way that universe is built.
Mm,
You don't have to give a fuck about anything else that's been told.
no,
They're just giving you a setting,
they can
and they're
pick
and
a
they're
vault
going,
number and just be like, yep, set this vault.
yeah, this is your vault number. This is where that vault is located,
Yeah,
and and then I mean, even like the shithousery of whoever was running the vault, they can decide themselves.
yeah.
Like it's such a iconic but easy to work with
Oh,
like necessity that you can. Out of all games, this has a decent chance being a good story,
yeah,
but that might mean it doesn't feel as Fallout like as the games do.
yeah. I get you.
But the Last of Us, what a show! Josh is desperate for me to play the Last of Us games, which I will get around to at some point. Um, this was a
Films.
very interesting bit of news I saw today.
Yeah, I haven't seen this, so I'm
This
intrigued.
popped up maybe 2 hours ago on my feed. And at first I didn't take too much notice, then I saw it from two other sources.
Okay.
A Scarecrow movie is reportedly in the works. This movie will be set in the Matt Reeves Batman universe.
Be very cool.
Oh, baby. Scarecrow works.
It does, and I'm wondering if this is coming out because obviously the Penguin series is not long off, if I'm right.
I think, although they haven't said anything yet, I think we're expecting a delay for that.
Probably. But like I wonder if the character that is Scarecrow or the person like whoever's gonna play him, I wonder if they're kind of like mentioned or dropped in the
Quite
Penguin
possibly.
show to kind of set them up in that world, and then we're gonna get a film. We know we're getting a Batman 2. Matt Reeves is being allowed to kind of cook with this universe that he's making.
When they've also, funnily enough, to go along with that, it didn't deserve its own news point, but it should be discussed. Today or yesterday is 1 year since DC announced James Gunn and Peter Safran as the head of DC.
It's been an interesting year.
But yeah, with the relaunch of Elseworlds comics and us being told that films outside the main DCU are going to be Elseworlds films, and I hope they go really hard with that branding, like
Yeah,
understanding by plastering Elseworlds on it. They need to build that identity with normal consumers that Elseworlds is a fun story that you don't need to give a fuck about anything else for.
yeah,
Why not let why not let Matt Reeves cook?
yeah. We know from the first one and all the interviews like how passionate he is about the Batman universe.
Let him tell his stories.
Yeah,
Fuck it.
James
We
Gunn
ball.
knows the first one was a success, and he's got this world, this vision of a Batman world that seems very compelling.
Yeah.
Like you say, they need to nail like the branding for the DCU and the DC Elseworlds so that people instantly go, okay, this isn't DCU. I don't need to stress about. I haven't
Yeah.
seen Superman or seen all the other
In
stuff.
an ideal world, what DC need to do is they need to build a DCU slowly and methodically without trying to rush for people like me and you who are going to turn up and watch all these films anyway.
Yep.
And then Elseworlds needs to be what people who are sick of having to watch 60 hours of content every year to stay on track for. So they go, oh, here's an Elseworld Superman story. And they're like, Superman, it's only 3 hours. I don't need to do any homework. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what Matt
Um,
Reeves is doing. It's going to be like people, oh, I want to watch a new Batman. Oh, there's just Batman World, like just Gotham and stuff. It's like, oh, I can watch these ones and not have to worry about Batman in the bigger picture, sort of thing.
yeah. I think I'm going to start writing a script for an Elseworlds Flash story, so that I can play the Flash and get a treatment on it. I reckon I could sell a Flash film written, directed, and starring myself to James Gunn. What do you reckon?
I'm sure that you can do better VFX and I'll instantly sell it.
Um, I'd love it. I'm also getting to the point now, especially like having played so much Spider-Man over the weekend and recency bias. I'm like,
Flash
I'd
game.
love a shot of playing.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, Flash game. I'd love a shot of giving Peter Parker a go though.
Okay.
Like a alter like Spider-Man UK. Give me a chance to do that because I don't think I could learn a decent New York accent. I feel like I just cringe myself out.
Just do a Spider-Man in London.
Yeah, yes, exactly that. I could nail that. Bit of British sarcasm instead of Spider-Man quips, and just let me cook. We already know that the best Spider-Men are British anyway.
Yeah.
Just let me cook Spider-Man UK with Athens, London, American accent.
Could be like a duo team up with Spider-Punk.
Yeah, exactly that. But yeah, I would also love a Flash video game. That'd be phenomenal. I want it. I want it bad. And with the magical SSD in the PS5, and not just the way they use it. Oh, you could make him run around the entire world. Hey, as good as the game was and as easy to use as the PS5 is, some of the way people talk about PS5 still winds me up. Anyway, the biggest bit of news I think this week, other than maybe all the SAG-AFTRA updates, the Marvels, which is due to come out in 2 weeks tomorrow.
Oof, that close.
November 10th. November 10th? 10th.
Okay.
According to people who got to see earlier versions of the film and have now seen the final version of the film, has reportedly made a major last-minute change to the end of the film. Which is interesting enough anyway, and a little bit concerning with Marvel's shaky reputation as of recently.
Yeah.
And the fact that we said that Ant-Man felt like it had some slapdash changes right at the end.
Yeah.
Even though no one said it did, it felt like it. But people who've broken this news on Twitter because of embargoes are being very vague about their opinions on said changes. The only real thing that leads to an opinion is someone said big changes from the other version I saw. Will be interesting to see what the discourse on Twitter is like afterwards. 2 additional tickets have been purchased.
Okay.
So maybe that person liked it, or maybe they just want to be in the cinema when people see it and they want to hear the reaction.
Possibly.
The kind of vibe I'm getting from a lot of the people who are tweeting this stuff seems to be that they've taken what was just a story end and they have changed it to play a larger part of the main MCU story, bringing back some of the interconnectivity that people have been claiming hasn't happened since Endgame.
Okay. I worry that they're going to force that too much.
With how last minute this change appears to be, that is a slight concern I have as well.
I also
and like
worry.
we said, they don't have a lot of buying power with us right now.
No, it could either be they've slapped someone in at the end. Like, oh, this hero's appeared. Connect in. I wonder if originally it was going to kind of set up and lead into another TV show.
Yeah.
And with all the MCU TV stuff going on, they've had to let's change that because that might not happen now. We have to make it fit into the lead into film more.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, with it being last minute, it's a little worrying.
It's a little touch and go, that's for sure.
It also can't be anything reshot.
Yeah.
So that means it's just a chop and change.
Yeah.
Which
maybe, I mean, it's possible that although they're dressing it up as a last minute change,
It could have been a while
Maybe it
ago,
was
but
just, yeah, maybe it was something they always planned on doing, but they didn't want it to risk it being leaked.
well,
So they had a fake ending put in for the earlier looks at the film.
possibly. We also know Marvel does film a lot of extra stuff, so it could have been they filmed a few things and they've re-chopped up and added in a different ending that they like, and that's
It,
why.
it it wouldn't be the first time I've ever heard of a fake ending being put in for early screening so the true end didn't leak. And then even the reviewers and some people working at the company, when they
Yeah.
went to see it on opening night, were genuinely shocked by how the film ended because that wasn't the ending they'd worked on.
Well, yeah, we
Um,
know Marvel likes to hide stuff, so.
exactly. But it'll be interesting to see how that pays off.
Hmm.
And that is it for our Nerd News Network this week. Very big one and lots of like truly beefy points to get into.
Oh yeah, there's a lot happened. A lot happened.
Now for my own personal hell.
Yes, more
The
so for you than
Content
me.
Championship.
Yeah, it's a tough one
This
this week.
we have the animated Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s that I grew up watching and Hori's first child grew up watching.
First child? When's what? This is new.
I've got to keep the insults fresh, otherwise they're too predictable. Versus the greatest Star Wars film, Rogue One. As always, we've got 6 categories to help us just tackle this impossible task. Personal relevance, how well has it aged, rewatchability, story, acting, and cinematography / general visuals. It's gonna suck.
More so for you, I think,
Yeah.
than me. We all know I'm the
So
Star
let's
Wars
get straight
fanboy.
into it. Yeah, let's not waste time. Let's just get straight into the
Yeah.
stuff. Why not? So on here, I have written for personal relevance that the animated Spider-Man show is my first vivid superhero memory.
Okay.
I still remember some of these episodes, as we discovered when I was like, I'm sure there's an episode with Spot in it that I've seen before.
Yep.
Why do I know this guy? And I was like, oh no, there is one. They like hung about. It still means a lot to me. At some point I want to go back and rewatch it all again because it was that good a damn show. But then on the flip side, you've got what I've already said is, in my opinion, the best Star Wars film. And when you've got as many all-timers as the Star Wars franchise, that is very impressive. It's like saying it's the best ABBA song. It's fucking impressive.
That's a hell of a comparison, but I understand what you mean. Yeah, I mean,
ABBA are goated.
I know. It's just Star Wars. But I'm with you. Like, Star Wars isn't my personal best. We've done that before, but it's like I'm pretty sure I have it at like number 2 or number 3. Like, I'm pretty sure I do have it at number 2. So it's like you say, it is up there as one of the top Star Wars like pieces of content. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I would say when you think to like that period after the prequels where we didn't have much for a while, and then along came like Rogue One, then we got Solo and stuff. It's like Rogue One really kind of relit the fire for Star Wars
100%.
and kind of opened up this idea of like, there's plenty of other stories to be told that don't have to be Skywalker focused. So yeah, that film is amazing. The Spider-Man, original animated Spider-Man. I mean, I remember those from when I was younger. I never, I think I said this last time we had Spider-Man. I haven't seen a lot of it. I like it is what I remember as cartoon Spider-Man, but I don't remember spending a lot of time watching episodes of it. I was kind of wasn't that, I guess, into it at the time. I don't know, or I was past it when it was like really all on the TV a lot.
To be fair, I think it was just before my time, but my brother watched it, so it was on, and then I was like, this is fucking awesome. He has webs and powers and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's that sort of my issue with being like the youngest. My sisters had control of the TV, so stuff like that often got missed.
Yeah.
But how well it's aged.
Spider-Man has aged like a fucking goat. It created an entire generation of Spider-Man fans.
It did.
And I think what we can say about 90s animation for superheroes in general is the two greatest animated characters of the 90s and early noughties are the two biggest superheroes today in Batman and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Oh yeah, there's like
they
our
were already
generation is
probably the biggest leading into that. But then the animated series came along for an entire new generation of people and they just cemented their position.
Well, yeah, there's a reason that kids of our generation either dressed up as Spider-Man or Batman. Like that was they were the cartoons that were on TV.
What do kids even dress up as anymore? I feel like kids still dress up as Batman and
Fortnite
Spider-Man.
skins. Surely.
I feel like every Halloween, Batman and Spider-Man are still like
they probably
they
costumes, still will be,
which is wild.
And a lot more. I think a wide range of MCU characters as well now. But
100%. Probably get a fair few captures.
But I mean, Rogue One. It was well received, but I feel like over time people have realized how good Rogue One was.
Yes, 100%. It is definitely aged better. And the release of Andor, I think, really helped it.
Yeah, it did.
A lot of people didn't watch Rogue One initially because they were like, Star Wars a bit dead now. And then they got hooked onto the Disney Plus shows. They watched Andor, and they're like, "Oh wait, this is about this Rogue One character. Let me go watch Rogue One." And they're like, "Oh my god, that's peak."
I think it's
as we've discovered with Star Wars over the last few years, there are two sides of the Star Wars fandom now.
Yeah.
But we didn't know they existed before Rogue One.
Yeah.
Because Star Wars was just Star Wars.
Yeah.
Whereas Rogue One showed, but what if there was just like very limited / no Force use?
Yeah.
And I think it's absolute peak Star Wars. I love it. And it has aged phenomenally well.
Yeah, it has. Rewatchability.
Well, I mean, I said previously, I want to go back at some point and watch Spider-Man cartoon. It's just a time commitment when there are so many banging shows happening right now.
This is true.
Maybe at some point I'll make it my I have 20 minutes before I need to try and force myself to go to sleep, so I better watch TV for 2 hours. And it can be my show that sits in there.
Yeah, fair.
Take the Family Guy role, if you will.
Yeah, I get you.
And Andor's the exact same. I adore it. I think I've rewatched it twice since I saw it in the cinema.
I think I'm similar. I've definitely rewatched it a couple of times.
It's very much a commitment film to watch, purely because you do have to actually focus on it. I can't have Andor on as background noise.
True.
It feels offensive.
I think I'd be more like if someone was like, "Do you want to sit down and rewatch the 90s Spider-Man? Or do you want to chuck Andor on?" But I'll chuck Andor on. It definitely.
I think I'd go the other way. Purely because Andor is just like, it's not a thing I watch as stupid as it sounds lightly. I'm kind of the opinion, if I'm gonna put Andor on, well, right, I'm gonna sit down and watch it. And if I'm not gonna sit down and watch it, I'm not putting it on.
I think, I'm of the attitude of, out of all the Star Wars stuff, I can chuck Andor on and not necessarily feel I have to then binge all this. Like, if I chuck episode 4 on, I'm like, well, I've got to watch 5 and 6 now. If I chuck on the like, you end up in deep. Whereas I could get away with like, oh, Andor ends where I remember Star Wars beginning. Right, we're good. Whereas,
makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of how I view it.
Story.
We've always raved about the Andor story. Andor? Rogue One story.
The Rogue One story is absolute peak Star Wars. While the way they destroy the Death Star in episode 4 is not actually a plot hole if you use your brain, of course there has to be a weak spot. The fact that for 30 years people acted like it was a plot hole, and was like, right, now you got me doing it. Rogue One was like, right, we will fix that plot hole. We will make it make sense.
Yeah.
It was compelling. It was well written top to bottom. It used Darth Vader the way I prefer Darth Vader to be used, which is very little and terrifying when you see him.
Mm-hmm.
It is Star Wars
Yeah.
through and through.
And it had a set end goal it had to reach. It didn't try and do more than it was meant to do. It wrapped up and filled that gap perfectly as it should.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so good.
100%.
Spider-Man, I mean,
I think for a 90s children cartoon, the writing went harder than it had any right to go.
that's probably fair. I can.
It had phenomenal takes on Kingpin and the Green Goblin and Hobgoblin. I'm pretty sure we got some Carnage and Venom in there. It tackled the idea of Madam Web and different versions of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I can't think of another children's cartoon from the 90s that actually put as much thought into the story as
Yeah, they did a great job of taking the stories from the comics that are well written and keeping them just as well written for
yes.
the animated.
And I think it's the thing people have got to realize for like people who maybe haven't read any comics. The way comics are written is normally a story is done over like 3 issues, potentially more if it's a bigger story, and they did that quite a bit in the cartoon as well.
Yeah,
There was so many 2-part episodes in the cartoon.
they kind of realized at the time it's like, why waste the time trying to rewrite these great stories and let's just implement them in a way that makes sense, sort of thing.
Yeah. Acting.
I mean,
Rogue One is phenomenal.
yeah, some great performances in Rogue One.
Some brilliant actors. I mean, you got is it Lars Mikkelsen or have I got the wrong one? No, Lars is the one who plays Thrawn.
Yes.
Who's his brother who was in
Mads.
Yes, Mads Mikkelsen, the more famous one. How bad is it that
yeah,
Rebels and Ahsoka are so deep in my mind? It got rid of Mads Mikkelsen from my brain.
Yeah,
who else did we have?
Diego, who's Cassian.
Yeah, Cassian Andor. You had
Yeah,
Donnie Yen.
Yeah.
Ben Mendelsohn, who's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So good. Of course, Forrest Whitaker was in it as Saw Gerrera. Jesus Christ,
Yes.
this cast was stacked.
Carrie Fisher was in there.
The power of Star Wars to get massive actors come be like, yes, please, I'd like to do this is crazy.
Really, really was.
And I mean, it showed we've always said that the Star Wars acting can only be as good as the story is because of the nature of it. And because it was dealing with just political stuff in the Star Wars universe and not worrying as much about
Jedi,
the mystical side,
the
story can be more grounded, allowing the acting to be even better.
Yep.
I think a lot of the actors from the original trilogy could have been just as good in this film, but in the films they were in, there was more mysticism, so that it had to be a slightly different tone of acting that isn't as impressive.
Yeah.
The voice acting in Spider-Man is so unbelievably 90s.
Yeah, but
I don't know what else you can really do it. Like we were just saying about Star Wars, you can only do what's needed for the content. At the end of the day, it was a cartoon written for children in 25-minute episodes.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do.
It's done in the way you would expect it to be done.
Exactly that.
In reality is like that makes it so good.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's so good. Cinematography / general visual appeal. Rogue One is the prettiest film I have ever seen. I'm not saying there isn't better cinematography or visuals out there, but pure moments where I go, wow, that's pretty. Rogue One dominates my brain in a way that I didn't actually realize. I have too many times where I'm just sitting there and I will think of like one of the scenes from Rogue One where you see like a Star Destroyer come in or you see a planet or whatever. It is gorgeous.
There is a lot of still frames in that film that just scream Star Wars. And considering it's a film basically without Jedis or anything, but yet they sell that universe so well through that film visually. Yeah, stunning film. And the lean into practical as always was so well done.
Yeah, what I will say is it took the template from George Lucas
Yes.
with the style of the shot starting above a planet and like panning down that you see all the time. It took a lot of them concepts that we see throughout Star Wars because they wanted to make sure the film felt like Star Wars despite there being no lightsabers.
Yeah.
And using that with the practical effects and the power of new cinematography techniques, it just gives us the prettiest thing you can imagine. And it's unparalleled. It was a 90s cartoon. It looked like a 90s cartoon.
Yeah.
It wasn't ugly. It wasn't phenomenal. When you look at where drawn animation for Spider-Man is currently.
Yeah.
It looks basic.
It's like, it's a 90s cartoon.
Yeah. Right. I would give anything for the people who've drawn Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse to redraw them episodes but keep the exact same voice acting. Like a proper remaster. Just like, okay, here is how this episode worked, redraw it in that style, and I would probably never stop watching it.
The same people that did Spider-Verse, if they were to do an animated Spider-Man series, I think that would be incredible.
I mean, don't forget we're getting the Homecoming series. Was it called?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So it'll be nice to have an animated Spider-Man show again for sure.
Yeah.
Now, time to do the tallying. I'll be honest, I actually feel a little bit better about how much this is going to hurt after discussing it.
It doesn't feel like it stings too much.
Yeah. Personal relevance for me has to go to Spider-Man.
For me, it has to be Star Wars.
That's absolutely fine. So that makes that one a draw.
Yeah.
How well it is aged has to be Spider-Man. Because Rogue One has not had enough time to age it. It's only 7 years old.
Yeah, and I need I do my best to not Rogue One's aged amazingly because of Andor, but it's like I need to take that out of it. It's like when you look at it side by side, it's like the animated Spider-Man for what it is has aged very well. So I could give that a Spider-Man.
So that makes it 1-0 Spider-Man. Rewatchability. Oh, this is rough
for me. Not Andor. I keep doing this. Rogue
One. What would I say has a higher rewatchability? I mean, I've rewatched Rogue One. I haven't rewatched Spider-Man unless it's already on.
I think that answers
which doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, that has to be Rogue One. Story is Rogue One.
Yeah, it has to be.
Acting is Rogue One.
Yeah, visuals
and cinematography / visuals is the most outstandingly Rogue One category.
Yeah,
and it's one of these things where it feels dirty because it feels like we're just shitting all over this, but we need to remember one of them was a Marvel kids show in the 90s when Marvel were just trying to stay afloat. And one of these was a high budget Disney Star Wars production when a love for Star Wars was being reignited because there was more films coming out, and at that point in time, films nearly reaching or crushing $1 billion wasn't uncommon, so they were fine throwing money at it.
Yeah.
So, like, context is king.
Oh, yeah.
Andor is by far the better piece of content. Rogue One!
It's all the same.
Yeah, it's all the same. Andor, Rogue One. Spider-Man Andor, Rogue One.
It's going to be the Andor trilogy.
Yeah. Rogue One is our winner. It sucks because
I mean, the old fella did well to get to round 2.
He did. He put up one hell of a fight. And that is another Star Wars project that's made it through, by the way. So
definitely not influencing this podcast in any way.
Of 5 projects that have made it through to round 3, 4 of them are Star Wars so far.
It's just the better franchise.
However, there is only a chance for one more
He'll make it.
Star Wars project to make it in. I'm not 100% sure it will.
I believe.
We shall see.
I'm
But
purposely going to only vote for it.
next week, we have Daredevil versus Fellowship of the Rings. The dirty one. We're not going to enjoy it,
Oh,
but you guys will.
I already
Chloe's
know
just
what
gonna have
I'm
an
going to have.
existential crisis.
I know
Yeah.
what I have to do.
But I'm not sure if I'm strong enough to do it. It's not always easy being a nerd.
No, it's really not. We really put ourselves in difficult positions.
Yeah, I don't, it was so much easier when we just kept this to fucking super shit.
But with that said,
Yes, we will see you next week with another character profile. Shall I tease who the character profile is going to be?
go for it. For those listening. And none of that came through. I wanted to know.
Anti-Venom.
Oh.
There you go.
I thought you purposefully muted then to just tease people even more.
No, my noise gate is just set at a very, very good level. Anti-Venom will be the character profile next week, which
Very
for those
exciting.
who know, and those who don't get to know. We'll have episode 4 of Loki.
Yeah.
Episode 7 of Gen V, the penultimate episode of Gen V. We will be getting ready for the return of Invincible.
Yes.
There will be more nerdy news goodness. There will be another content championship. Maybe I'll talk about Five Nights at Freddy's if it's funny, bad enough, or good enough, or whatever enough. But what you're going to do is you're going to like, you're going to subscribe, and you will see us next week.
See you next week.